Welcome to episode 49 of the What Happens Next podcast. And in this podcast episode, we've got Michelle Smith, who's talking about purposeful living. Now, this podcast is designed to help people who are thinking about the next chapter of their lives. And often when we talk to people about what success looks like in their 50s, 60s and beyond, often we get the answer, I want to live a life with a bit more purpose. And this is what we talk about. Michelle Smith and I talk about in the interview today. We talk about intellectual, occupational, financial well-being, but actually how the big wins are often in the social connections we make in our lives. We also talk about how Michelle enjoyed both Paris 2024 Olympics and London 2012. I tell a really embarrassing story about buying the tickets for a wrong football match. But more importantly, Michelle talks about the work she does with business women, about limiting beliefs and behaviour, but also looking at the power of coaching when it comes to thinking about what happens next and finding purpose in the next chapter of our lives. So without further ado, let's move on to Michelle's interview. So at the minute, I'm spending a lot of time writing the What Happens Next book. I'm 50,000 words in as I speak to you today and currently working to make sure that the book adds as much value as we can to people thinking about that next stage in their lives. Now, the book's not ready yet. It won't be out until sometime in 2025. I'm working hard to get it finished. But what you can do is sign up for the book waiting list. So you're one of the first people that gets access. You can simply do that by visiting whathappensnext.life/book. Join the waiting list today and you'll be one of the first persons to get access to the book and some extra goodies when it comes out.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to, that was really quick, wasn't it? Shall I slow down a bit? Let's do that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to What Happens Next, the show where we talk about that point we get in our lives when we're thinking about making positive change. Often when clients come in and see me to talk about their financial plan, what's brought them to that point is a frustration, a point in their lives where they're thinking, I want to make change and I want to make sure I've got enough money to do it and I've put those sort of elements in place, but I want to have a conversation about that. And interestingly, often some of the conversations we have with clients about their money support a conversation about their lives, because actually, even if you've got all of the money in the world, the important question is, what do you do with your time and how does that give you real satisfaction in your life? So the What Happens Next project is all about having conversations with really interesting people, experts in their areas, who can then give us some insight in terms of some of the things we should be thinking about if we're thinking about what happens next. Now, before I start talking to Michelle today, and I'm really excited about the insight she's going to share, there's a few things that I'd love for you to do. We're on a massive mission with What Happens Next. And to be frank, my life would be easier and less busy without it. But we're on a mission to help as many people as we can. And the way that we'd love you to do that for free, and literally it would take 2 minutes of your time, is to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which you're watching right now. There'll be a button at the top where you can do that. But also what we'd love is for you to complete our free quiz. Now, you will see that there's a QR code on the screen that you can scan with your phone and complete the quiz. What does the quiz do? It gives you an insight in terms of where you sit from a well-being perspective. Now, why do we look at what happens next from a well-being perspective? It's often because a lot of the people who come to see us when they think about what happens next have high intellectual and occupational well-being. They get a lot of satisfaction from work. Financial well-being is typically fairly high. But they're also in a position where they've probably neglected other elements of their lives, in particular social, community, and physical. And what the quiz does is give you a starting point to see where you are from a well-being perspective, so that you can make the decisions you need if you want to make positive change. Hopefully that's useful, and I'm really excited about the conversation today. Firstly, I want to talk about the Olympics, right? Because Michelle is we're recording this just before Paris 2024, and you're off to the Olympics, Michelle.
I am, and I am so excited. As I say that, I'm getting goose pimples because it's just, yeah. We're going to see the last night of the athletics.
Right.
So, and I love watching the athletics. I just love the atmosphere in the stadiums. I love the excitement of seeing things right before your eyes. So, yeah, can't wait.
I've got to tell you my Olympic story before we start. I loved London for the Olympics because I'm from East London, so my original home was 10 minutes away from Stratford, so it was really it felt like it was coming home. And I got loads of tickets, so I got tickets for the handball and the Paralympics and the Aquatic Centre. I'd got loads of tickets, but on the day of the opening ceremony, I'm watching from home, and I to be frank, I had a glass of wine, and I decided to order some tickets for the football. And I wanted Brazil, England at Wembley. And I couldn't get these tickets. The opening ceremony stopped. I went to bed. Got up in the morning, and Cassie said to me, "Oh, I got those tickets for you." I was like, brilliant. I couldn't get through on the website for ages, and you managed to get them straight away. She went, "Yep." So kick-off 2:00. I went, Are you sure? Because I thought the kick-off was at 6. She went, "Yeah, kick-off 2:00. I went, "Can you just quickly check that we've got the right tickets?" She went, "Yeah." So went and sort of booted up the laptop and looked at what tickets she went. She went, "It's a bit of a problem. You wanted England, Brazil. I actually got Japan, South Africa." I was like, okay, but that's fine. It's not England, Brazil, but we can live with that. Yeah, there's a slight other thing. It's not at Wembley. It's at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff.
Oh, no.
And because I was so excited about the Olympics, and saw a lot in the Olympic Park, and went to Wimbledon to see the tennis. I drove to Cardiff to watch a game of a 0-0 draw at the Millennium Stadium. But I had a great day with my daughter along the way. So actually, it was like, and the bit I love about the Olympics is the sports you realise you didn't know you liked. So what's that sport for you?
What's that sport for me? Well, we did quite a few events at London 2012. And actually, I'm kind of not answering your question here. I'm kind of going in the opposite direction, but we had we had tickets for the shooting because it was just literally down the road from us in Woolwich. And we'd been to the opening ceremony the night before, went to watch the shooting, and it was not at all dynamic because it was pistol shooting.
Right.
And it was like, oh my goodness me, I don't really get, well, obviously you've got the target, you get a sense of what they're doing, but it was just one of those ways.
There's no movement, is there?
No. And I'm ashamed to say I fell asleep.
So sounds about as good as my 0-0 draw, but I love it. The one I'm loving at the minute, and we will talk about a bit of what happens next stuff, but the one I love at the minute, and it was introduced in Tokyo, I believe, is the rock climbing. That element of that, that is such a, I know it's only 10 seconds, but such a dynamic event. It's absolutely
phenomenal,
brilliant.
Isn't it? Yeah. And actually, in answer to your question, skateboarding, I thought that was just incredible to watch. So, yeah.
Yeah, love it. So let's talk about. We've done the Olympics now. I've shared my embarrassing story. Tell us a little bit about you. Let's start off with that.
Okay. Well, you might be able to tell from my accent that I'm not a Londoner. I'm an adopted Londoner. We moved down here from a place called Fleetwood in Lancashire about just short of 18 years ago. So we sort of moved into a city environment at a point in our lives where most people are moving out for a quieter life.
Right.
So I was 35 when we moved here. And it was quite a culture shock, I have to say. But we're still here, nearly 18 years on. So I think that kind of tells you that we were probably meant to be here. And I wouldn't be anywhere else, to be honest. But back then, I'd just finished a master's in people management and development, and there's not much going on in Fleetwood. So the driver for moving down here really was career. We'd put our house on the market in Fleetwood with the intention of just moving a couple of streets away, and then a chance discussion after a weekend away here in London about how amazing it would be to live down here just started a whole chain of events. And kind of got us thinking about something different. And once you open your mind to possibilities, you can end up going on a completely different journey, which is what happened for us, really. So I got a job down here in HR because that was my background. And I would say we've been on a little bit of a business journey since then. Sadly, I lost my dad in 2011, but that meant that I inherited a property. So that was the start of my first steps into being a business owner. So my husband and I started a property portfolio. And that was really the start of me thinking, do you know what? I don't know whether HR is really for me after all. So I'm sure we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later, but it was just a point at which a decision had to be made about what I do next. And I'd always wanted to run my very own business. I wanted to create a brand. So that's kind of where I've got to today, creating my own business, building it from the ground up.
And how's that journey been?
Challenging, absolutely. But I think in challenge, there is so much to help us grow, actually. No matter what age we are, there's learning opportunities and the chance to continue to do and learn and, evolve. So, yeah.
I love that phrase you used, opening your mind up to possibilities. And the writing that I'm doing for the What Happens Next book at the minute, I'm thinking a lot about that. And in particular, how, there's two elements that I always think about. There's that too much choice means that sometimes we don't take action because there's just so much to think about and do. But also the art of just experimentation and play, and thinking about just trying stuff, seeing if it fits. There's one of my favourite books on this subject is a book by Bill Burnett called Design Your Life. And he talks about that thing of just giving stuff a go. And if it fits, great. If it doesn't, you can discard it and just doing. And what I'm curious about is when you opened your mind up to all those possibilities, and your change was a huge one, two-folded question. Number one, how did you, with all of those possibilities, how do you decide on which one was right for you? And then number two, how did you manage the fundamental change you had to make sure that you could do it?
Okay. I think fundamental change. Okay. So I guess looking back, the milestones that kind of come to mind are the first milestone being the decision to move down here. And I think that was very much about, okay, well, my husband and I opened our minds to that as a possibility. And then really looking to think about, okay, that's taking us out of our comfort zone completely. You know, we'd lived in Fleetwood for all of our lives up to that point. So this is a big step out of a very, very tight comfort zone. But it was about, okay, well, if we do it, then we're open to other possibilities. If we don't do it, then there's the possibility of living with the regret of not doing it.
Yeah.
And I think because I was 35, I think I probably had that sense of, oh goodness, you know, if I don't do it now, I never will. So it was, okay, there are opportunities of doing it, and they outweigh that feeling of staying where we are and maybe regretting it later.
Yeah.
But I always remember us saying, okay, well, we can go and we can try it for a couple of years. And if it doesn't work out, we can always come back.
Yeah, sure.
So that sits to your point, Chris, about try, explore, experiment.
Yeah.
Rather than allowing yourself to think, okay, no, it's uncomfortable being in my comfort zone because I know that I want to do something else, but actually I'm going to stay here because it's more comfortable than stepping out.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But yeah, that sense of regret is something that certainly when I'm having conversations with clients and people who are speaking to me about what happens next now, it's that element of, look, time is the finite resource, isn't it? And you don't want to get to the end of whatever time we've got left and think, I wished I would have done that. So you had that big, massive sort of change. You gave it a go, and then you left the job to start the business. Tell me a bit about Clarity and Beyond and how you help people.
Okay, well, I tried a few things between starting that portfolio in 2011 and starting Clarity and Beyond 2 years ago. Because I was trying to find my way, my niche, what it was that lit me up, basically. And the thing that really took me away from HR was the fact that it was very much about dealing with, I was in employee relations. So it was quite, taxing, a lot of disciplinaries, grievances, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It really, that was the thing that made me realize it was time to move on. But the thing I did love about being in HR was the people development. I ran my own teams. I had people that that worked with me and for me. And the thing that was really, really satisfying to me was seeing them achieve their potential and seeing them develop as people.
Yeah.
And so I had a bit of a light bulb moment after being coached myself in my business, that actually all that knowledge, all that experience I can bring to helping predominantly business owners to achieve their potential and take their businesses to the next level through coaching and accountability. So that's how Clarity and Beyond came about. And that's kind of what I do and I love to do every day.
And help me understand a bit more about at what point do people come to you? Is it when they're starting their business? Is it sort of fairly on a sort of period of journey in the business when the business is fairly mature? At what point do you work with clients to support them?
It can be at any point on that journey. However, my real focus is on the predominantly business women who have got so far in their business journey, but they're coming up against what is probably a self-imposed glass ceiling. So they know they can do more, but for whatever reason, they just don't seem to be able to take that next step. Because I think we a lot of the women that I work with have had corporate careers. They've probably had a similar journey to me. You know, they've done the study, they've had the career, they've got the skills, the experience, the knowledge, and an awful lot of wisdom. And you kind of think that you can apply all of that to a business setting and therefore be really successful. But sometimes we hit that glass ceiling, which usually is related to patterns of belief, patterns of behavior that we've had with us. We've been carrying them around for all our lives, and it's that stops us moving forward.
Well, I mean, it's it's one of those recurring themes in a lot of these conversations. I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday for What Happens Next, an amazing guy called Pete Matthew, who's been doing financial education on YouTube for 15 years and got 100,000 subscribers and done great work. And it all went back to that stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing is the stories we tell ourselves about money, for example, can be sometimes empowering, but also debilitating. And it's the element of changing those narratives sometimes is the starting point to make positive change in your life, isn't it? What's the common recurring story of people who come to you of that sort of self-limiting belief? What's the story that's normally holding them back the most?
I think particularly with women, it's I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough to do this. I'm not good enough. That's why things aren't going my way. That's and you tend to internalize it and think, well, it's me. It's down to me.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think interestingly, I think one of the important things we should all do as business owners is be more vulnerable, because actually, even though you've got that perception of perfect, we've got a pretty established business, pretty financially successful. Guess what? I still make plenty of mistakes and get stuff wrong. That element of having a more authentic conversation as business owners actually helps people along the way, because they don't feel as inadequate as they might. So
I think you're so right. Yeah. So right.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. Tell me a bit about what I'm really curious about. I had a conversation last week, Michelle, that was really interesting. So I had a conversation about how, as business owners, we're a bit weird, right? Because we leave these secure roles. You at the NHS, I work for a massive financial institution, and walk out the door and go, you know what, I can do all this myself. I would take the economic risk. I would take all of the risks involved. Fine. I'll definitely do that. Without any of the framework that we get through being employed. So tell us a little bit about what was the point when you thought, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. And what was the so for me, it was, I went into the office one day in town, I was in Aldgate, looked at the wall, and they had these massive wall with all the values of the business on the wall. And actually, my lived experience of those values was completely different to what it said on its wall. And I went home and said to Cass, I think we can do it better, and struggled for 2 years getting the business up to some sort of way where we could see a path forward, but fought my way through it. So tell me a little bit about what was the inflection point for you? What was the bit where you thought, right, this is the reason I'm doing it?
It was a realization, and you've kind of taken the words out of my mouth a little bit, really, because it is about core values and life purpose.
Yeah.
I think that is the two together are just absolutely fundamental. And you know, I was working in the NHS, so when you think about core values and purpose, you know, that was wonderful. You know, what a wonderful environment to be working in. But actually, if what you do day to day isn't the thing that really speaks to your soul,
yeah,
I don't think you're ever going to be happy. I think you have to find your.
I really hope you're enjoying the interview so far. But now what I'd like you to do is take action to help you work out what happens next in your life. The easiest way to do that is to do the What Happens Next quiz. It's free to do, takes about 5 minutes, and you can do it while you make a cup of tea and wait for the next part of the interview. You can visit www.whathappensnext.life/quiz. You'll get your results by email immediately. And what the quiz will do is give you an insight into the areas of wellbeing you're doing really well at, but also the areas that you might want to improve. Enjoy the quiz. Let us know what you think. And let's get on with the interview.
What do the Japanese call it? Is it ikigai? So
Ikigai.
So it's about who are you fundamentally as a person? What are the things that matter to you, and where do you see your legacy, or what do you see your legacy as being?
Yeah.
And I think a great exercise that I sometimes do with clients to really get to understand what is important to them is write your own retirement speech. You know, what do you want to be recognized for? What are the things that you want to have achieved in your life? And what will make you feel that you've got there? You know, what are the things that are going to really make you feel as though you've lived your purpose and your values?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of the people watching this and a lot of individuals who are thinking about what happens next might be of a certain age where they're thinking that their working life is come to an end, when in actual fact there's so many more people who are having this next chapter and thinking about what's next. And my version of your write your own retirement speech, it's you know, has to be handled sensitively, but thinking about what you'd want in your eulogy is an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because actually in that chapter you're going, well, what, like if I've done that and I'm really proud of doing that, the what happens next element is the bit where I can really have, and again, having a conversation about it this week. In the first few years, we as a business, we had to be financially sustainable. When I think about my legacy and my purpose, it's more about positive impacts now. And even though we need to be commercial to deliver that, it's interesting how that focus shifts over time. But yeah, really interesting. I know that I was doing the research for this interview, and you talk a lot about failure and the importance of going through failure, like we've all gone through. What have you learned from the times you've failed, and how do we reframe failure in a way that actually serves us as opposed to holds us back?
Okay. there's lots of sort of sound bites that come to mind when I think about failure and how we can reframe it. And sound bites can sound quite trite, but actually I believe a lot of them to be true. So you could say there's no failure, only information. Because sometimes without failure, you don't have enough information to be able to move
make
forward.
change. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if you think back over history to some of the, like Thomas Edison, great inventor, but how many failures, if we're going to use the word, did he have before he discovered the incandescent light bulb?
Yeah.
And he kind of, when you read about how he approached failure, it was very much about, well, each failure is a step along the way towards success. And indeed it was,
Yeah.
You think about Elon Musk with the space program and how many times that hasn't worked out. But ultimately, each step is a step on the road towards finding the bit of the puzzle that gives us the next step.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I think when we're thinking about what happens next on that, the element that's interesting to me is trying stuff and not liking it is absolutely part of the journey, isn't it? Trying stuff and actually not doing it. And I think, I think it's interesting when you think about this sort of stuff because it can sound quite cliched and try it. But I like it's either a win or a learn. Just so simple to go, right, okay, well, yeah, it's either successful or as you say, I've learned something that I can then use for the future.
Definitely. And if you, just to your point earlier about when we were chatting about play and learning and how over the course of our lives we can pick up patterns or beliefs that don't serve us. We think back to babies when they're first learning to walk. They don't just stand up and walk, they fall down hundreds of times.
Yeah.
But they don't stop, and we don't stop them. We encourage them to fall over because in the falling over, the steps and the learning to stand up and the thinking about, okay, well, I'm kind of getting it one step at a time. Yeah. So why as we get older should we stop seeing things as opportunities to get better? Why do we see them as failure?
Here's my completely untested theory, and we can have a conversation about this. My completely untested theory is that the reason is because of a social pressure to be seen as competent. And that competence then comes from that pressure of going, right, well, I know exactly what I'm doing, then avoids, like, we want to avoid admitting failure or failing. But also that means that we don't try as much. So I I suppose the big thing, particularly when we get a bit older, is how do we then revisit those childlike traits of curiosity and playfulness and but without impacting our own identity, because there's a counterbalance there, isn't there?
I think there's ways that you can introduce play to everyday life, absolutely. And what I think is that, well, in fact, actually, the scientific research about it, that process of play and experimentation is what opens your mind to creativity. And if you open your mind to creativity, then you see more possibilities. You're more open to, okay, well, that didn't work, but maybe this could. And we step out of trying to solve kind of mindset where we look at the problem and all we see is the problem. Whereas if you take your mind to a much more creative place, as I say, you're able to see more possibilities. You might start thinking of weird and wonderful ways to solve a problem. But in getting your creative juices flowing, you might then find yourself in all of that with a solution to a problem that you would never have thought of without having,
Yeah.
got into that place of fun and play.
Completely get that. Well, how might that fit practically? So if somebody who's not particularly imaginative, how might that work in somebody's life? So give me a practical example of how, if somebody was thinking about setting up a business, how they might play a bit to get there, to work out where they are on the path.
Really simple, straightforward thing to do. Get a big piece of paper and some felt tip pens and just use words or use drawings or, just suspend your adult thoughts that this is like colouring in and being like a child. Forget that. Just go with it. Just go with the flow. And don't overthink.
I love that. And there's a question that we share quite a lot on What Happens Next. There's a planning process that we, again, from Bill Burnett's book, that talks about 3 cards. So he says, card number 1's the king. If you could live your ideal life, what would it look like? Card number 2 is the jack. If everything went wrong, what would you be happy with? So plan for the best, prepare for the worst. But the one I absolutely love, and the one I talk about quite a lot, is the joker. And the question you ask is, if you knew you'd never run out of money again, but you knew nobody would laugh, how would you spend your time? And that element of like knowing nobody would laugh is the bit where you go, well, I can do anything now, can't I? Because that social element is taken away, which is what I really like. Talk to me about how coaching fits in helping and supporting somebody if they're thinking about what happens next.
I think a coach can help you get out of that space of not being able to see the wood for the trees, not being able to kind of, or having a sense of indecision, or not really knowing what your core purpose or values are. Because if you start on this journey alone, you might not necessarily, you might get to that glass ceiling again. You might get to the point where you're thinking, well, I don't really know. I need somebody to kind of facilitate that for me and help me to see it and understand it. And I think the other real powerful element of coaching is accountability as well. Because it's so easy if you're going things alone to kind of let yourself off the hook a little bit and not have that accountability. So, and really, if I were to describe coaching, I would say it's a safe space where somebody can know that they're being seen, they're being heard, and they're being understood. And when you're exploring things that you've maybe not explored before, and maybe not with anybody else, having that safe space is a really valuable thing, because you can open up and, just explore.
Yeah, and it's that element of no judgment as well, I'd imagine, isn't it? That element of if I speak to my dad or my wife or somebody, there's always that element of not that you'd not respect a coach's opinion, but they're that step away so that you can have a bit more of an open, honest and frank conversation with them, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. And I mean, our family and the people that are close to us only ever want the best for us.
Yeah.
But they might have their own limitations and their own patterns and beliefs, which they bring to the situation. So, particularly if you're thinking about setting up a business, if you've got somebody who is very averse to risk, they might try and influence you from that place. And actually having that sort of that space where you can explore the risks yourself, as you say, Chris, without any kind of judgment, you can work through and reassure yourself, well, are there any risks? What are they, and how do I mitigate them?
Yeah. And tell me a story, let's make sure it's confidential, but tell me a story of how you've helped somebody through that journey.
Okay, I helped a midlife woman recently through a breakthrough day. So I offer intensive personal breakthrough days, which is like a tailored session, 7 to 8 hours of just getting in the room and really working on all of this
That one to
mindset.
one, that was a group.
Yeah, no, that's one to one. And she'd had a really successful corporate career, but she wanted to branch out. She had her vision of setting up her own business. She could see it in her mind's eye. She had planned out what she was going to do, but she was carrying a lot of baggage with her from things that had happened in childhood, situations that had happened to her over which she had no control. And that had left her with a sense of, well, people like me don't do this sort of thing. So we worked through the negative emotions that were in that baggage. Basically, we unpacked that, and using the sort of distance of time and looking at the situations from a very dissociated way. We were able to get her to see the learnings that she could take from those negative emotions and how she could positively move forward and leave them where they were, and take all the things that she'd learned into her new business and apply them in a really positive way. And her business is now off the ground. Talking to her now, her language that she's using with herself is completely different. And that's the real reward for me, to be able to hear the language before and the language after, and the progress. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I'd imagine seeing that progress is rewarding in its own right. Where so when it comes to coaching, I'm often always curious about this, because of that nature of change, that nature of evolution. How do you feel about a coaching journey, and do clients continue to work with you, or is it I've put you on the path, here you go? How should it work, and how could it work with your clients?
It becomes more light touch for me, because actually, if I've worked on things like negative emotions, limiting beliefs, and I've got somebody to a point where they can make real progress from where they are, being there, for a check-in 6 months down the line, great. But I like to think that they move on,
Yeah,
and they might well.
And there's always that element of giving somebody the tools to use it itself, isn't there? That's the element. Yeah.
Yeah. And, as human beings, we might find ourselves butting up against another glass ceiling further down the line, and that might be something that somebody else is better served to help them with, but by having a check-in process, if there's anything that I can help with on a one-off basis, fine. But actually, I think you're right. It's about giving people the tools to have in their bag that they can use when they need them in the future.
Gotcha. Completely get that. Now, there's a lot of coaches who do all sorts of different work to support people in their own specific areas of expertise. If somebody's looking for a coach to support them through a transition, if they're thinking about what happens next, what do they need to look for?
Okay. I think trust is absolutely at the top of the list. So you need to find somebody that you can trust and that you can work with. So that's the number one. I would also be asking, is it a coach that you want, or is it a mentor that you need? Because some people maybe have the tools in their toolkit already, but they just need somebody who's walked that path to kind of tell them what they should be doing next. So a lot of people call themselves coaches, but they might be more mentors or consultants.
What do you see the difference as?
A coach is somebody who holds space and asks the questions that unlock the potential. A mentor is somebody who, as I say, has already walked that path and can say, right, well, I did this in your particular business or in your particular circumstances. You might want to do that. And a consultant is somebody who's going to come in, and if we're talking about a business, they'll say, right, okay, well, you need to do this, 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 and this. Yeah. So coaching is very much about unlocking your potential and being true to yourself. And the others are much more about the practical, do this, do that, consider this, consider the other.
Where do you think people need to start?
I think it depends what they need. And I would say we all have the potential. We've all got all the resources we need. A coach will help you unlock those. But if you're stuck with a practical problem, a consultant or a mentor might be better. It really does depend.
Yeah, it depends on the challenges you're going through at that particular point in time. So trust is one factor. What are the others?
Trust, I think knowing that the person that you are going to work with is going to bring the sort of skills and the resources that you need. So that's about having a conversation and understanding how a coach works and what they can bring to the table, really. So, for instance, I use NLP and hypnotherapy, and if somebody is thinking, no, that's not that, I'm not really interested in that, I just want to sit and have a conversation, I don't want to use any of those techniques, then they might not choose me, And it understanding exactly what the coach will do for you and how they will do it is definitely good to understand.
Okay, tell me a bit about that, because I'm curious. Hypnotherapy, how does that fit into the coaching process, and why might that be useful for somebody who's trying to think about what happens next in their life?
Okay. So hypnotherapy can be really powerful for moving past some of the blocks and the limitations. And all of those patterns that we carry with us. So it can be used to as an add-on, really, or as an alternative, because some people really like the sort of the relaxing and calming effect of hypnotherapy. Particularly if they're quite stressed or anxious. But it's about that link between the conscious and the subconscious mind, and kind of getting them to work for you rather than against you.
100% get that. So you've got somebody who's thinking about what happens next. You've gone through your own what happens next journey a couple of times with the move and starting a business. What tips would you provide somebody who's thinking about what happens next? And if starting a business is part of that journey for them, where do you start?
Okay. Well, I think regardless of whether business is in the frame or not, I think the real first step is thinking about, what am I about? What are my core values? What is my purpose? What do I want the next stage of my life to look like? What do I want to achieve? And kind of work back from there.
Oh, so let's look at that as an example. What is it? What can we do? And what practical thing can we do to make sure that we're getting closer to what our core values are?
Okay, I would suggest journaling. I think that's and you've spoken about writing your book, the power of actually writing words, of sitting down and putting something, committing it to paper, I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
So again, a pen and a piece of paper, what is important to me in my life? And try and think of the top 10 things that really light you up. What is important? Is it family? Is it happiness? Is it freedom? Is it money? It's quite an important one, depending on what you want to achieve in that next phase of your life. Is it community? Giving back? Volunteering? What are the top 10 things that are really important, and that if you fulfilled them, you would know that you were living your life purpose?
Yeah. I completely get that. Yeah, because it's all about that life well lived, isn't it? Just making sure that you're doing something. And I suppose the interesting thing is that evolution of purpose, because it does. My experience with working with my clients is that actually that purpose changes over time, because typically when you're in that sort of early middle age, when the kids are still a bit younger, and your purpose is to just, for me it was anyway, certainly to be the best dad I could be.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting to a point where I was building my own financial independence and getting that. But then actually the evolution of purpose happens throughout ages. So how often do you think we need to think about purpose, redefine what it means to us, and look at how we see it, how it fits into our lives?
I think it should be something that we do regularly. You think about the standard New Year's resolutions kind of thing, when you're setting goals, quite often we'll set goals that really don't resonate with what is really important,
Yeah, we'll do the things we think we should say we should do. Yeah.
And actually, what impact do we want to have? And actually, we have an impact on the people around us every single day. So just asking yourself that question every morning, maybe, what impact am I going to have today? What impact am I going to have on myself, my nearest and dearest, my friends, my community? Because then you're kind of checking in then with those core values.
It's really interesting, because I'm out of practice at the minute, but I need to get back to journaling. But for about 5 months, I journaled every morning, and it was a practice that I really enjoyed. And what was insightful is the questions I chose to ask myself, not so much the answers, but the questions I chose to ask myself. And the reason it was insightful is because one of the questions that I ask is, how am I going to make a positive impact today? And what that told me when I'm thinking about it is that making a positive impact in other people's lives is important to me.
Yeah.
So actually, it's often not what you write. It's the questions that you think are important to ask yourself are a link to your purpose. And I
Yeah.
found that quite insightful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
yeah,
actually, there's something coming from the subconscious there, isn't there? That
there
was
is.
the question that came out, you know,
But
and
it's a
that was something that,
check-in. It's a subconscious check-in. Are you making a
oh,
positive impact? And that was me. And it took me a while, actually, to realise that the question was more insightful than the answer. It's interesting, isn't it? It was an interesting thing. But if somebody says, right, okay, I've got this passion, I've done my values work, I know what I stand for, I think I can facilitate some of those values. I'm a firm believer, and it's one of our values at Savello. I'm a firm believer in the power of business to do good in the world. I think
yeah.
those two things are definitely connected, depending on whether that's sort of what you want to do.
Yeah.
But somebody's worked out their values and they've said, right, you know what? I think starting a business will allow me to live a life of value and purpose. Day one, they've done what you've done. They've done what a lot of your clients do. They've decided that it's going to happen. What do they do next?
They plan the next 12 months, I would say, and they write some really purpose-driven goals. And they pick, actually, before they pick, I would say, write the purpose-driven goals and make sure that they are linked back to that core purpose. And then they really think about, okay, what are the key tasks that I need to do in the first 3 months to take me towards that goal?
Yeah.
And break things down, I would say, into think about the year, break it down into quarters, and then think about all the tasks that need to happen to make that goal a reality.
Yeah. And then you had a really interesting point before we start the interview: to avoid overwhelm. Maybe only out of all the tasks you need to do, only focus on 3 and don't worry about the rest until you've done the 3. How about that as an add-on?
Yeah, absolutely. Because actually, what we tend to find, and I think most people would agree that this is the case, when we start a business, we think of all the things that we've got to do, all the hats that we've got to wear, and we create massive to-do lists of all the little jobs that need to be done. And we forget that actually there are probably only 3 or 4 every day that will move the business forward. Yeah. So what are the big impact tasks, the ones that are going to add value and move the business forward? And what are the little things that actually we can often find ourselves procrastinating by doing? Like social media and, you know. But
likely to have less impact than the other things on the list.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Jill, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too.
Good. Where can people find out a little bit more about you and the work you do?
Okay, well, they can find out more at my website, which is clarityandbeyond.co.uk, or they can connect with me on LinkedIn, Michelle Smith.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Hopefully you've enjoyed that and had the insight that you were looking for from watching today. Have a lovely remainder of the day or night. I don't even know when you're watching this. It could be any time. But enjoy it. Hopefully it was useful, and we'll see you on What Happens Next soon.
So that was Michelle's interview. I hope you found it really insightful. I know I did. And in the comments, wherever you're watching this, I'd love for you to tell me what generated the most curiosity when you were thinking about today's episode. I'd love to know in the comments below. That's it for today. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you on the podcast soon.